Hi folks, and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking through my process of designing a book cover. This is a pre-made book cover, so it's not for any story in particular, apart from one that sort of exists in my head. But the idea was I wanted to have two female characters on the cover in some kind of combative stance, as though they're about to leap into battle. And I wanted it to have a really fantastical feel to it because I love designing fantastical things. That's always been a sort of staple in my work. And I love designing for young adult books as well. So the idea of this is that it's a young adult book, a young adult fantasy book with two strong female characters at its center. So I came up with the title Sisterhood of Steel. Do love a bit of alliteration or sibilance there. So here you're just seeing me go through a few different options and different compositions with the thumbnails. Because this is a personal project, I didn't go through that many different options. I did play around with different poses using this tool called Magic Poser, which is where these sort of robotic figures have come from. And I just find that is really helpful to quickly produce poses and not having to go through lots and lots of different references. It just really helps with my process. And drawing figures can take a long time. So this helped me quite a bit, just being able to trace over those and get a basis for how this was going to look. So now we're moving on to a more sort of basic sketch. We've moved past the that sort of tracing stage. And basically what I do here is I will draw and then redraw and then redraw again until I get something that's far more refined. I like starting off a bit more sketchy like this and a bit more loose. It gives it a lot more energy and movement, makes the whole thing a bit more dynamic. Obviously adding in the facial expressions, and I changed the pose a little bit so that the arm of the woman in behind is coming out towards the viewer a little bit more. I think that worked better. Now, obviously, one of the big things you need to think about when designing a book cover is how the text is going to integrate with the image, and so that's something I like to do along the way. A lot of illustrators will create artwork for book covers, and then the publisher will go ahead and put in the text. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. I just like to integrate the two together. I really like the process of including the text within the image because I think that you can't really separate them. Well, at least I don't like separating them, and I like to do them together. And I like to have sort of similar shapes as well within the typography as I found within the image itself. So here I'm going in and adding more detail on the armor and this lady's dress. That's probably my favorite part of this whole process, is adding in all that detail. It's something that you can find across all of my work, basically. Whether it includes humans or not. And this is just a very basic sort of swirly-whirly pattern, which you can find quite a bit in my work as well. Now, for the inspiration of this dress, I was looking at... I wanted it to look fantastical, but also somewhat contemporary. And obviously there's been this whole cottagecore and nightcore and various different cores that have come up over the past few years. And so I looked at sort of fantasy and cottagecore dresses because I wanted it to have a bit of that feel to it so that it felt contemporary in some ways, but also fantastical and a little bit historical. And likewise with the armor, I just looked at a whole lot of different medieval armor designs and sort of made it up from there. I've done a few different pieces over the years with women in armor, and so I've got a little bit of idea of how it works. This may not be especially historically accurate to any period or anything, but it is fantasy, so I feel like if she's going to be wearing a pair of pants that are made of chainmail. That's fine, right? And also the text is going in there, so I didn't want to include too much detail over that area, because you don't want too much distraction from the text as well. And aside from those kind of models that I used at the beginning, I didn't really use much reference for the people apart from their clothes, because I found that basically gave me a really good base for those. Going in now and adding some more details and more of an environment. So what I do here is I block in all the different colours, and I like to start in grayscale just to get a sense of the tone and the contrast. I know that the text needs to stand out against the backgrounds, so I start with that, and as you can see I do all these little thumbnails with some colour as well. And to be honest, in the end I didn't end up going with any of these particularly, but it gives you a bit of an idea of the sort of vibe I was going for in terms of, you know, brighter, more fantastical colours. I think that's something we're seeing a lot more of in book covers now, and yeah, that's something I wanted to capture in this. So I started off with blue and then decided I didn't really like the blue and went for more of this sunsetty orange colour, and it sort of turned into orange and purple, which is a colour combination I absolutely love. And I think it's really bold, it stands out nicely, but it also fits in with what exists out there in the young adult genre. I added these swirly whirly bits sort of around the outside as well to make it feel a little bit more fantastical as well. And the clouds I've imported from another design that I did in the past, because these take a very, very long time to draw. And this whole process that you're seeing right now took me about 8 hours. But if I'd drawn all those clouds as well and not imported them, it would take me quite a bit longer. So often I will do that with different elements. And you'll see in the background there as well, I've used a stamp that saves me a bit of time to create the trees, the forest in the background. I did experiment with having a little hut in there, but then thought better of it. Got a bit of a sunburst happening in behind to give more contrast, because the figures are going to be a little bit darker, and then I wanted that light in the background to really contrast with them. And these little bright little dots in the front are just sort of a placeholder at the moment. I wanted something that was going to make it feel more like this is the foreground, midground and background. I wasn't very happy with how this front bit was looking at this point, but you'll see I go back and make some changes there. And I also realised that she didn't have an arrow, and that would be quite helpful. But the positioning of the arrow was a bit tricky because I hadn't really planned that out properly. And I didn't want it covering too much of her face. So apologies to any archers out there. It may not exactly be accurate to how you would draw an arrow, but we're having to use a little bit of artistic license there. Just moving the text around a bit and adding in more depth, basically, is what I'm doing here. Adding in more detail in the hair and the faces. I didn't want it to feel too digital as well, so I always go in and add a bit more texture to my designs. I like them to have a little bit of a almost graininess to them. It's very subtle, but I think it means that it doesn't look too airbrushed, which is not something I really want in my work. I want it to really feel like it was created by a human. And with the rise of AI artwork, I think that's something that I really want to focus on, because that's one of the telltale signs, I think, of artificial intelligence, AI generated work. So yeah, then I'm going back in and adding, as you can see, more texture, more gradients, some little sparkles on the armor. And yeah, that's pretty much it finished up. So please let me know in the comments if you like this design, if you like this format of video as well, because it's something I would like to do some more of. It's been a little while since I've been on YouTube. I didn't want to mention that at the beginning, but yeah, I want to get more back into this whole YouTube thing, sharing some more of my process on here, and hopefully some useful information for indie authors as well. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will link this cover down below as well if you're interested in purchasing it for your own book. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!